then we got into, I think then we're getting into, again, another period in the commodity market into the 90s. And coming out of the 80s, with the $9 oil, there had been accumulation of significant debts, as Dick Johnson, who was then the minister and the Treasury in the Getty government, had used Keynesian methods to try to ameliorate the worst of the recessions that hit the province. So they engaged in some fairly significant capital expenditures in hospitals and other related care across the province, and added quite a bit more to the debt for capital purposes. So some way you'd argue a portion of that is really the good debt, in the sense that has long-run payoffs. Another group that argued, well, debt's debt, and you were in the process, you were accumulating more debt just from operating purposes anyway. Yeah. So any of that, by that time, then got into the Ralph Klein era, as Getty stepped down under an unhappy sort of decade, and Klein then showed up on the scheme of things. Now the Liberals under Lawrence Decore, of course, in the provincial area, had said, this PC government, it's the worst wastrel group we've ever had. We need good, solid fiscal management, and waved his wallet and everything, and just about cleaned out the Conservatives in the first in that election. Klein, with him. Mike Percy from University of Business, Dean of the Business School, and a whole other group. So all of that was linked to those reforms, and what you've got to do is to balance the provincial books. Both the Liberals were on that for the political side, because they saw they could get a large part of the right-wing vote with that. And so it was really a right-wing liberal group that were probably more, they might have been, they were actually more right-wing than the Tories that were in power through the Getty, Keynesian, and other sides. And then came Klein. Now we had no doubt about what indeed was a key priority, and that was to eliminate the debt. That was fairly straightforward. The message was kept there. And so what you had to do was to start cutting programs, because the problem was that there wasn't too much spending. It wasn't on the revenue side. It was just too much spending. The thoughts that Alberta still had one of the lowest tax regimes or anything else around, and those things might be looked at, were thought to be only dreamt up on occasion by people of leftists and academic and other suspicious types, and not to really be uttered in polite society, particularly and if you're in Calgary. Well, though it could be raised in northern Alberta and still survive, when you got to Calgary, well, nobody would even think of that. Anyway, so the popular ex-mayor of Calgary then rode that theme, and we had the massive cuts then. Now the cuts were centered around, and that really had a considerable impact on healthcare, because this then led to the first systematic attack on the comprehensiveness principle in Medicare, which is, well, what services are covered? And the whole discussion about the core services.